Good evening, guys. Good evening. Welcome to the Ayurvedic Success System 2025. It feels great to kick this one off, as we'll talk about shortly, as when we dive into the content for tonight. This is the course. It's the content that I love teaching the most. It's the most important part of my professional life now by a long, long way. This is where my passion is. And I can't wait to spend the next week talking about this blueprint, time-tested, ancient kind of model backed up by the most profound Western neuroscience around how we build the most brilliant, happy, successful, healthy life. Time-tested, proven. I'm going to talk about how it changed my life 6 years ago to provide a bit of a personal spin on it. So super excited to kick this one off. A massive welcome to everyone who's joining live. So grateful to everyone for being here. We've got just under 1,200 people in this Facebook group, which is phenomenal. And I think it's a real sign of people's desire to no longer just tread water, I suppose, or not tread water, but this desire to really make our lives just as brilliant as they can be in the full spectrum of human experience. And I'm so grateful to everyone for everyone being here, for signing up, for finding the time to take part. I'd love to know where everyone is. I just saw Cynthia from Philadelphia. I'd love to know where everyone is joining us from. And we've got people on every continent, I think, other than Antarctica, which is, I think, a first for us. To have literally every continent. We've got lots of people in South Africa, lots of people in Canada, lots of people in Holland, obviously loads of people from England as well, York, Austria. So it's great to have such an eclectic array of people here. So before I dive in, I'm going to say this every session together that we have, just because it's important. If everyone could just give me a barrage, a flurry of emojis, smiley faces, thumbs up, etc., just because it helps to get the video to the top of the page so everyone who's trying to find it can find it just a little bit more easily. Louise is in Fishbourne. That's not Cape Town. It's just down the road from me though, so some people are very, very close to where I live. So before we dive into the content, just a quick word about these sessions. Obviously we've got a session so tonight all the way through to Thursday, and then we've got some bonus sessions going on into the following week. I aim to keep them around 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes in length, because I know everyone's busy, but they're recorded and they will be emailed out the next morning. Okay, so if you have to leave early or you can't make it, then you can always catch up. And a word about this Facebook page. Okay, this Facebook page is the beating heart of these weeks. If you've done any of the previous free courses with me, you'll know how important this Facebook page is, because it allows us to engage, it allows us to ask questions, to interact, anything that's not clear, anything that you want to know how it relates to you. If you just want to be inspired or motivated or energized, this Facebook page is the way to do that. So Holly and I kind of give ourselves to this Facebook page over the next week. So use that, ask questions, share your, what you're doing, ask, when we get into the techniques, let me know how you're getting on. Okay, because this Facebook page, I'm a big fan of energy. The more energy we put in, I think the more energy we get back. And if we can maintain the inspiration and the motivation of this group, it just helps everyone get the most from it. Okay, so thank you for being here. So tonight I want to just overview and introduce what this is all about, and then lay the foundations around the neurobiology, which is nowhere near as scary as it sounds, around why this blueprint is so profoundly unique and so profoundly transformative. Because if you ever set yourself a goal, an aim, an objective, a New Year's resolution, and you haven't fulfilled it, or you've lost momentum, it's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's the neurology of the brain and the way it's working against us. And tonight we have to learn why that's so important, because nothing else will work unless we get this right. Okay, so What we're talking about over the next week, 10 days, for me it's the absolute priority of my work. It's the most important part of my work now by a long, long way. You go back, 3 or 4 years, my work was entirely, well, not entirely, but largely, almost exclusively healthcare. It was about helping people who were sick to get better. It was about alleviating suffering. It was about the application, the delivery of healthcare. But what I've learned over the last few years is that is nowhere near enough. Okay, it's nowhere near enough by a long, long, long shot. It's not even close to being enough. And the cancer work, my background is in cancer, research, integrative cancer care, particularly in that arena. The reason focusing exclusively on health isn't enough is, what's the point? What's the point of living in a super fit, super healthy body? What's the point of having robust, vital health if we're unhappy, if we're lonely, if we hate our jobs, if we're bored with life, if we're always experiencing scarcity, if we are sick and tired of never having enough money, if we are sick and tired of not fulfilling our goals and dreams, if we are sick and tired of accepting poor relationships, if the whole framework of our life isn't working properly, it's no good being really good in one area and really, vulnerable or unhappy in another area. Okay, to thrive, to live a truly brilliant life, we need all of the core areas, and there are 8 core areas. Okay, we're going to talk about this on Tuesday, one of the most important sessions of the week. It's called the Eastern Life Audit, which is about the 8 pillars of human experience, and making sure that if we are experiencing abundance or moving into abundance in those 8 areas, our life transforms. Okay, and health is one of those 8, but it's no good on its own. So this, for me, the reason this is the biggest priority, the content we're talking about now, the reason it's the biggest priority of my work is because it underscores everything. There's nothing that falls outside of it. And it was a light bulb moment, actually, for me, thinking, again, coming from a cancer background and a cancer research background and whatnot. Someone once said to me, when we are on our deathbed and we look back at our lives, ultimately what we want to say to ourselves is that I lived my life the way I wanted to. I lived it my way, by my design. I did the things, I lived it, I engaged, I followed my dreams. Yes, there were good points and there were bad points, there were hard times and there were great times, and there was the full spectrum of experience, but I lived it brilliantly. I seized every moment of every day, and I am proud of what I achieved, and I'm proud of how I lived it, and I'm proud of the way I followed through on what was important to me. And the Eastern traditions, and we're going to talk about this every session we have, the Eastern traditions have the most beautiful, beautiful label for this that I've ever come across. Okay, and what the Eastern traditions call this is, they call it living in the magic. Okay, a life lived in the magic. Kind of brain tattoo that into your head, because we want this to become almost a mantra. Okay, this idea of living our life in the magic. Okay, it runs through virtually all of the Eastern traditions: Ayurveda, Tibetan medicine, Buddhism, all of these kinds of things. And what a life lived in the magic actually means, the way it's described in the Eastern texts, is a ceaseless unfolding, or a ceaseless flow of all good things into your life, in terms of happiness, health, energy, financial security, love, abundance, meaning and purpose, excitement for life, living, helping others, caring for others. It's experiencing an overwhelming level of excitement and vitality and abundance for all of the core, these 8 core areas of life. It's easy to skip past that. It's easy just to kind of fly past that and move on to the next bit. But think about what our daily lives would look like if that was actually the case, not for someone else, where we see someone else's life and we think, oh, their life is really good and their life is brilliant and aren't they lucky? But for us as individuals, imagine what our life would feel like, what our day-to-day experience would be like if from the moment we woke up to the moment we went to bed every day, yes, there are difficult times and there are hardships and there are challenges, but through that process, we have autonomy, we have empowerment, we have excitement, we have positivity, we have vitality, we have energy, we have love, we have dreams, we have all these things. Imagine how our daily experience would change with that level of empowerment, that level of autonomy, that level of living in the magic. Okay, and it's I would say it's one of the most, if not the single most important part of my day-to-day life, because every morning, well, actually that's a lie, every weekday, not so much on the weekends, but every morning in the week, I run a specific morning routine, which we'll talk about, which is an integral part of this, which is about setting our mind up for brilliance every day, and how that then impacts upon the day, setting ourselves up every day consciously to live in the magic. And I've applied this to the full range of human experience. I've applied it to people with terminal cancer who've got months to live. I've applied it to high-flying executives in the banking world. I've applied it to people whose marriages are breaking down. I've applied it to my own life, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I can hand on heart say I've never seen it fail. Okay, and what my motivation for running this week is, and some of you may know I've got a book coming out in 3 weeks, my first book, and the next book I write is going to be about this, because I just want the whole world to know about it. I've been very fortunate to know about it for most of my life because of who I was exposed to as a young age. But ultimately, the aim of the Ayurvedic success system is to create an all-encompassing blueprint that packages up into one place all of the Eastern techniques and all of the Western neuroscience techniques into one place that allows this to happen. It's manualized, it's easy to adopt, it's sustainable, it's evidence-based. If we do it, it works. Okay. And it's not purely, full disclosure, it's not purely Ayurvedic. It's predominantly Vedic, but it calls upon Buddhism and it calls upon Tibetan philosophy and Nepalese, and lots of the Himalayan regions. And like I say, it's dovetailed fully with just the most mind-bending neurological, psychological research. So it's just such a unique model. And like I said, I've been exposed to this from a very young age because I was very fortunate to grow up around a Sri Lankan Ayurvedic doctor, Western doctor, kind of spiritualist in many ways, who's taught me this from before my teenage years. But I never, again, with all sincerity and full disclosure, I never really used it in anger. It fascinated me, it intrigued me, it informed lots of the research I did as an undergraduate. But I never used it in anger. I never had to actually apply this framework to my own life until 2018. And I just want to briefly talk just for a couple of minutes about how it changed my life, because the reason the reason that I have the privilege of being able to teach these courses now is because of this. Because in 2018, I was still working in cancer research. I was working at Southampton Hospital, and I was burnt out. I had a 3-hour drive every day from my house to the hospital, there and back. I was working silly hours. I was stressed. I was never there for the kids' breakfast and school runs. I was never there for picking them up from school. I was never there for dinner. I was often missed bath and bedtime. I felt stifled. I had no creative freedom in the work I was doing. I knew that it wasn't where I was meant to be. It was an amazing 15 years, but it wasn't where I needed to be. I wanted to write. I wanted to teach people. I wanted to spread the word of Ayurveda and all of this content. I wanted to create content. I wanted to write, and I knew that I had to make a change, and I knew that if I didn't make a change, ultimately I'd be a hypocrite, because I'm trying to teach people these techniques, but I've never had the courage to actually do it myself. So in 2018, we had we had three kids under 5 at that point. We had a mortgage. We had, all of the pressures of, at that stage of life, but I just felt right. And I took the plunge, I left. And I remember the first day after the first day of me finishing, the day after my last day at work, I sat in my study for a whole day with no phone, no internet, no computer, just a notebook. And I wrote down, using this framework, everything that I wanted to achieve over the next 5 years, professionally, personally, financially, everything. Things like, and we're going to go through this process, things like making sure I was there for the school runs, okay, making sure I earned enough money. I'm not interested in money in any way, shape or form. Money doesn't interest me at all. But at the same time, it's obviously really important to provide for my family. That was a big driver. I wanted to write. One of my biggest dreams and goals was to get a book deal and to be able to write books. I love writing, and all of these things. And I wrote them all down and I used this process. And last year, it was the first time we ran this course as a free offering. It's 5 years to almost the day, February the 3rd. Every single goal, and I said it with absolute truthfulness, every single goal I set myself 5 years previously, the first day of my new life, financially, professionally, the book deal, work, how I was spending my days, every one of them came true, okay? And that culminates on February the 6th with my first book coming out. And I've subsequently, that's not down to, I haven't got any special skill set. It wasn't down to fluke. It wasn't down to luck. It wasn't down to good genes. It wasn't down, I'm nothing special in any way, shape or form. It was just down to applying this framework. And I've subsequently taught it to literally hundreds and hundreds of people. Okay, like I said, from terminally ill to banking executives. And it works in every context where it is properly applied and properly used. Okay, and you can't promise anything in any, you can't make promises for someone else. But what I will promise is that if you apply the framework and you apply it properly and you stick with it, I can hand on heart say the chance of you not seeing transformation over the coming months and years is very, very slim. Okay. So for me now, this is why, my focus is to propagate this message. And actually my next book, which I'm going to start writing in March, is about this. Okay, it's about this framework. Okay, which I can't wait to be able to expand upon in a full book. So living in the magic, the idea of living in the magic, the concept of living in the magic, where every day is a day when you get to the end of it, you look back and say, that was a brilliant day. I'm proud of myself. I committed. I ate well. I exercised. I controlled my outlook. I was loving. I helped others, whatever it may be. If we're to achieve that, and this is the first kind of big takeaway of the whole course, is if we are to experience that, if we're to live in the magic in this way that we've just described, the ability to do so is always, 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 unequivocally, without exception, always created in the mind before it will be experienced in the physical, tangible world. Okay? Not sometimes, possibly, occasionally, maybe, every single time. Okay? You can't live a life in the magic, in the real world, until you create it in your mind first, what it actually looks like. Okay? Think about anything that human beings have ever created. Think about your children. Think about your hobbies. Think about the car you drive. Think about aeroplanes. Think about space shuttles. Think about mobile phones. Think about chairs. Everything that man has created, where did it first exist? Before it physically reached fruition. It was created in our mind as an idea, as a desire, as a thought, as a belief, as an attitude. Okay, Nelson Mandela didn't overcome apartheid in South Africa on the streets. He created it in his head first, and then it created a reality. Okay, everything. And in the Vedic traditions, this is sacrosanct, in that if we are to create a life lived in the magic out there, we have to first create it in here. okay, in our mind. Yes, the book is out. The book is an audio book for everyone who's asking. And the most, so in the Vedic traditions, in the Himalayan traditions, they talk as in the microcosm, so in the macrocosm. So the way we create our world, our beliefs, our attitudes, our hopes, our dreams, our goals, the way we create them in here, in our mind, our outlooks, our beliefs, our attitudes, is what will be created in the outer world. Which is why, like I said, I spent that whole day when I left my work being crystal clear on creating this inner space, because I knew that I could only create it out there if I could create it in here first. And what's fascinating about that is that that's a concept that is 3,500 years old. But the most advanced Western neurological research says exactly the same thing. I'm going to touch on that in a minute, and we're going to touch on it again tomorrow, which is one of the reasons so many, and this, I'm not into kind of comparisons or pedestals or saying one thing is better than the other. But what I will say is I know lots of Western equivalent models, Western kind of self-help models. They typically focus on solving the problem without getting to why there is a problem in the first place. Okay, Janet, would this be creating from your imagination? It's actually deeper from that. It's a lot deeper than that. It's actually neurology. I'm going to talk about why now. Okay, because if everything that we hope to create, like Steve Jobs created the iPhone and the iPad and the iPod, but we hold it in our hands. But he spent months creating that in his head before he even put an idea down on paper. Okay, when for me, my book's coming out in 3 weeks, but that book was embryonic in my mind for years before I got a book deal, 3 years before I got a book deal and wrote it. Okay, so yes, visualization and imagination is really important, but only much further down the line. This is actually about neurology. I'm going to talk about why now, because if outer success and living in the magic and in the 8 pillars of prosperity, if that is dependent upon the world we create in our mind and the world we create in our beliefs and attitudes, there's a major problem with that. Okay, there is a major problem, a huge, in many cases, insurmountable problem to that. And unless we know how to get around it, there's no way forward. And that's what I said at the start. If you've ever set yourself a goal or a New Year's intention or a diet plan or an exercise plan, and 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, 8 months down the line, you've dropped it. This is why, okay? Because our beliefs, attitudes, hopes, dreams, goals, expectations are created in 2 ways. Okay, we can only create things 2 ways. We can create things in the conscious mind, where we are consciously engineering them, like Steve Jobs creating an iPhone, or subconsciously via beliefs that are below the surface. And both of those are neurologically and evolutionary designed to hold us back. Okay, and this is important to elaborate on. So the conscious mind is driven by a part of the brain called the neocortex. Okay, I appreciate this is quite potentially heavy for a Sunday evening, but we have to understand this because this is going to lay the foundation for everything else. So our conscious brain is governed by, our conscious mind is governed by a part of the brain called the neocortex, which is loosely synonymous with the ego. Okay, and the 2 inherent qualities of the neocortex are: 1, it's fear-based, and 2, it's status quo maintaining. Okay, the reason for that is that as primates evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, the primates that stayed safe, the primates that played small, were the ones that passed their genes on. The ones that didn't stray from the campfire, that didn't explore over the next hill, that didn't create risk, didn't take chances. They were the ones that got eaten. Okay, so our brain has evolved to play safe, stay close, don't push out, don't expand, don't take risks, don't expect more, because it's unknown, it's uncertain, it's dangerous, it's risky. Stay safe, play it small. Okay, so what then happens is that our neocortex hijacks our brain chemistry, our neurology, our hormones. It hijacks our whole physiology in a way that says, don't do this, don't do that, don't take that risk, don't start that business, don't go for that promotion, don't start that hobby. It's unknown, it's dangerous, it's risky. So our whole biochemistry and neurochemistry is established in a way that stops us doing it. And if you've ever set yourself a goal and then not followed through on it, that's why. Okay, because the neocortex is trying to stop you because it doesn't want you to take a risk. Is anyone happy with that before I move on? Does that make sense? Just give me a thumbs up if that makes sense, because it's really, 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 really important. Because if we don't get past that, we can't get anywhere. Okay, and that nearly railroaded me in 2018. Okay, I've got mortgages to pay, I've got 3 children to feed. This is silly, it's selfish, don't take the risk, don't do it, don't do it. And I nearly got hijacked, I nearly lost my nerve actually. So our conscious brain is after you finish this session and you think about, whatever goals or dreams or ambitions or hopes you have, your neocortex doesn't want you to do it. Okay. The second thing, which is even worse, is the subconscious mind. Okay. And how's this for a statistic? Over the course of every waking day, the brain has 35,000 thoughts on average. The brain has 35,000 thoughts. But 95% of all of those thoughts are governed by the subconscious brain. Okay, they're not rationally thought out, they're not consciously thought, they're driven by the subconscious brain. What's the subconscious brain made of? The subconscious brain is simply an amalgamation of all of the neocortex's activity over your whole life. Okay, so your subconscious, which is governing 95% of all of your thoughts, is simply the sum result of everything your neocortex has told you not to do over your whole life. Yes, exactly, Andrea, self-sabotage. So try to observe your self-talk, okay? And I'm as guilty as this as the next person. I'm definitely not putting myself on a pedestal saying that I've done it, so that's it. I fall victim to this every day. But tomorrow, try and notice your self-talk. So things like, why am I never successful? Why does that person always make it look easier than me? Why do I never have enough money? Why are my relationships never as good as they should be? Why do I find life boring? Why do I not have any excitement or passions in my life? Why do I feel like I'm not making a difference? Listen to the self-talk. Okay, where's that self-talk coming from? It's coming from all of the billions of thoughts we've had in the past, just informing the subconscious brain. Okay, and that is catastrophically damaging to us living in the magic, because it's kind of neurological metaphysics, for want of a better description, that whatever we put our focus on will always grow. Okay, whatever we put our focus on will always get bigger or stronger, always. Okay, so if we're consciously thinking, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, and our subconscious is constantly saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, that informs our behaviors, our outlooks, our decisions in a way that makes it far more likely that we won't do what we dream of doing. And this is so problematic. Yeah, exactly, Brenda. Where focus goes, energy flows. And this is so problematic that neurology and psychology actually has a label for it, which is called the self-fulfilling prophecy, which is now an established neuropsychiatric model, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. We fulfill what we prophesize. If we're thinking, I'm never going to be successful, I'm never going to have enough money, I'm never going to clear this debt, this business is never going to be successful, we consciously and subconsciously act in a way that makes those thoughts become reality. And there's been some astonishing research around the application of this in things like relationships, looking at the difference in belief structures between people who are happily married compared to not happily married or divorced, between successful business owners compared to non-successful business owners, compared to people who are financially abundant compared to people who aren't, people who are particularly health, people our health expectations are one of the most big, powerful predictors of our health status. Okay, so when we do the Eastern Life Audit and we start to actually analyze and review and do what I did in 2018, you do it for yourself. If we approach those goals and aims and hopes and dreams through the conscious mind, we're going to fail, because the conscious mind is going to say, don't do it, it's dangerous. If we approach them through the subconscious mind, it's going to say, don't do it, it's dangerous. So in both ways, the brain is going to hijack us and it's going to sabotage us. And that's why statistically 87% of people don't realize or follow through on newly set goals by month 6. 87%. We don't want to be in that group. Okay, we want to be in the 13% that thrive and move into the magic and make every day abundantly brilliant. Okay, so for us to do that, okay, we can't outthink it. Okay, so if I said to you now, everyone shut your eyes, and whatever you do, like your life depended upon it, do not think about a bright pink elephant. Okay, everyone here, including me, would think about a bright pink elephant, because to not think about it, you have to think about it. So if we're thinking, if we're simply thinking about what we want, then the brain, what the brain's going to hear is what we don't have. If we're thinking about, I want more money, it infers that I haven't got enough money now. If I want better health, it infers we're in poor health now. And the neocortex and the subconscious sabotage. So we can't outthink this. Okay, it's neurologically impossible, in terms of Western science, to outthink this. The only way we can get past these two blocks is to sever the control of the neocortex and sever the control of the subconscious belief system. Okay, it's the only way. Okay, because if we can do that, we're then able to do a profound neurological response, which is increase the suggestibility of the brain. This is the crux of the whole model, because if we can increase the suggestibility of the brain, okay, the suggestibility of the brain is a neurological state where the brain is open to new ideas without fear of being hijacked by the neocortex. Okay, if we can sever the neocortex control, if we can sever the self-sabotage and the hijacking, not through outthinking it, but by creating a different neurological pathway, everything becomes feasible. Okay, so lots of people here saying I'm a procrastinator. You can't. That's not anyone's fault. That's like saying I've got poor kidney output. You can't. Procrastination is a neurological response, and it's usually the brain's way of saying, I really, really, really don't want you to apply for that job or start that business or take a risk on that relationship because I think it's dangerous, and it tries to stop you. It's not, we're hardwired to procrastinate. So everyone who's saying procrastination, it's not you. It's your brain ultimately trying to stop you doing something. Okay, so we have to get around the neocortex, and we have to get around the self-conscious sabotage. Okay, that is what the Eastern traditions have been saying for 4,000 years. It's what the most advanced neuropsychological researchers around behavior change and successful life creation is saying. Okay, that is the sole focus of tomorrow's session. Okay, the sole focus of tomorrow's session. It'd be too much to talk about tonight. Tomorrow is about how we do that, and this is an evidence-based, clinically proven blueprint in Western science for bypassing these self-sabotaging frameworks. I was just about, that's so scary that you've just written that. Janet literally put up, do we need to rewire to refire? And I was literally about to say that exact sentence, because to refire the brain, we need to rewire it, something called neural plasticity and theta brain waves. Okay, concerns and fears over the past, where are they coming from? They're coming from the neocortex. We can get around them. Okay, so the aim of tomorrow is to allow us to move past these so that we can increase the suggestibility of the brain, so that when we apply Tuesday's model and Wednesday's model, we're applying it into a brain that believes it and is happy to pick it up and run with it without sabotaging. And then we can apply all of the other techniques around how we actually use this to bring about a move into the magic. Okay, so we couldn't move into this content without laying this foundation first. It's really important we understand this idea of living in the magic. It's really important we understand the idea that everything in the outer world is firstly created in the inner world. We have to understand the risk of the neocortex and the self-sabotaging brain. With that in place, we are perfectly lined up for the rest of the practices over the coming week and the bonus sessions. Okay, so I'd love to know what everyone thinks about that. Any comments or questions, please let me know. As always, and again, if you're thinking about this tomorrow, a good task tomorrow will be to look at your self-talk. Try and check in and tune into your self-talk. What's it saying? Where's it going? Okay, and also in preparation for Tuesday's session, just begin to get a notebook or a journal, or just mentally think about what you want this year to look like. Okay, if you could click your fingers or imagine it's the 12th of January 2026 next year, and you're looking back on this whole year, what would make it lived in the magic? You've got free reign, okay, within the parameters of your life. If this year, 365 days, is to be lived in the magic, professionally, personally, financially, socially, professionally, the full range, what does it look like? Okay, because that's really going to help us for Tuesday. Okay, so to have almost 200 people here live is an absolute privilege. So I'm so grateful for everyone being here. I'll be back at 7 p.m. tomorrow. If you've got any questions, anything, let me know in the Facebook page, and I will see you all soon. Have a great evening, guys, and take care.